Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a fairly quick and simple video. Nothing too groundbreaking, but I filmed it anyway, so why not share it? I'm using one of the Altenew Build a Flower or Craft a Flower die sets, specifically the Carnation layering die set. This came out a couple months ago, I think. I'm not sure. It's not new, like new, but it came out somewhat recently. Anyway, I used that and created two little paper carnations, adding some dimension and depth with easy ink blending. Got a couple little random tips in there. And of course, splatter. Splatter. And yeah, everything else I used was oldie but goodie favorites. As always, I will have links to everything I used in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, keeps this going. And that's it for the chatter. Let's get into making this card. As per usual, I did my die cutting before filming because die cutting is boring. And for my die cutting, I used soft lilac and olive Altenew cardstocks. And with this specific die set, this Craft a Flower Carnation, it's basically like 4 wafer dies. The 2 big ones are all the pieces for each carnation. And then, as you can see there, there's 2 dies. One's a cluster of the leaves, and then one's just an individual leaf. And I've talked about this before. I think I've tried to show it in a couple of videos. When it comes to layering die sets, I try to make a point of adding, like putting all the layers together, just like so. Like just holding the pieces and layering them up how they're meant to be to kind of give me a visual. One like this isn't too complicated, but sometimes, to see exactly how everything goes together, I like to just put it all together, get a good idea of what I'm doing, especially if I'm going to add ink blending, whatever. It just makes things easier. So with these ones, all the pieces per die is 1 carnation. And then they've got the little Altenew keyhole system. So even if you did like mix up the pieces, it won't matter because the 1 keyhole there for all the pieces at the top is it like a triangle shape? And then the one for this other one it's kind of like a little arrow sort of a shape. So you can't mix them up. It's another one of those cases where the designers thought of everything ahead of time. And I like that because it means I can do less thinking. And that's always a win in my book. So I've done this like many times over. This kind of isn't anything new, but depending on what you're using. So today I'm using color cardstock, which kind of eliminates a little bit of the work. You could, if you wanted, you could just use the color cardstock going about your day. Or another option would be to do various colors of cardstock, die cut, multiple pieces and then layer that together, especially with a die set like this. That could actually be kind of fun. But I started with just the soft lilac cardstock, and then I'm using the shades of purple fresh dye ink quad and adding color. And the thing you need to remember when you are ink blending on color cardstock is if you have a certain look you're going for, or a certain amount of color or depth or whatever, add your ink, let it fully dry before assembling, or even if it's like, say, a background, blend on your ink and then just let it fully dry. Either walk away from it or use your heat tool to fully dry the ink, because the ink will look significantly darker on color cardstock while the ink is still wet than it does when it's fully dry. And sometimes the difference is huge. So with these, I wasn't super concerned because I knew that these colors were going to dry back and soften and be lighter. But it is just interesting. Like, look how it is right now. Just these pieces, like how deep this darkest color, this midnight violet, like how dark it looks. It will dry back a lot. And I was fine with that because I wanted these to be lighter. But I thought I would mention that because it's just interesting sometimes where even using like if you use the same, like at the very beginning when I first started blending the color on these, I was using the soft lilac ink, which is the same color of ink as cardstock, and you could see it showed up. But if I had done just that, the ink would have dried and it would have looked like I hadn't done anything. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're working on colored cardstock, that whether it's inks or you could be using markers. I say the same thing when I'm using like alcohol markers on, craft cardstock, or you could be using like water-based markers on craft or color cardstock. Things just look a lot different than they do just on white cardstock. And that's always an option too. Sometimes I do that. It just depends on my mood. The bonus of using color cardstock versus just all my die cuts in white is a little bit of the work is eliminated because there's already a color, Whereas if I had just used white cardstock, but I wanted these all to be purple, I just would have had to spend a little bit more time blending ink, to cover the cardstock. But that's also an option because, yeah, the nice thing about having just white cardstock is as long as you've got ink, you have pretty much every option under the sun. So with these, I assemble them just in layers, and you can't see it on camera, but in real life, there was also like little numbers debossed into the layers, so like layer 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up until it's done. So simple. Again, it's all thought out. I love it. I don't have to really like think. Everything's all just done for me. So for the leaves, I used olive cardstock, and right now I'm using olive ink, which illustrates my point. Like it's all dark. That will like disappear for the most part. I kind of am being a little redundant using the same color ink as cardstock, but I like adding the same color in the beginning. It just kind of, because it dampens the cardstock, and then the darker colors blend into that just a little nicer. But see right there, I let that dry. And look how it almost looks like I still did nothing. So with the leaves, I did want them a little bit darker. So I pulled in another color, and that was the Evergreen. And again, this will still dry back. It won't be this intense, but it's just something to keep in mind, because especially if you really want like an intense, deep, dark, with color cardstock and just ink blending in general, you might have to go a lot darker than you think you would. So it's always good to, at the bare minimum, take a little scrap of whatever cardstock you're planning on using and test it out, and then let it dry fully, and then compare to what you want to do. So after I had all my blending done and my little carnations assembled, I pulled out a 3D embossing folder from Altenew, and I'm running that through my die cut machine with Andromeda cardstock, which is this super intense purple color. Love. So I embossed this panel, and then I am going to trim this down a bit. I had cut the piece of cardstock slightly larger than A2 sized. If you find that your panel of cardstock that you run through, and it doesn't really matter what brand of cardstock, or what brand of embossing folder, it more depends on the depth of the design. Sometimes if I use just an A2 piece of cardstock, like the same size cardstock as my card front, and then you run it through your embossing folder, don't be surprised when you go to adhere it that it's smaller than the card base, because the cardstock gets pressed, up and down into the design. And then that will it makes the cardstock look like it's shrunk. And in a sense, it kind of has, because it's no longer flat. So depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I'll just cut my cardstock panel slightly larger than I need it, run it through whatever embossing folder, and then just trim it to the size I need. So in this case, I trimmed it down a bit, and then I cut it at an angle. And then the remaining piece, I'm actually going to adhere to the inside of the card, and I'll just show that at the end. So I've adhered the cardstock to my card base, which is a top folding A2 white note card, so 4¼ by 5½ inches. And then I figured out my layout of all of these leaves and then these two little carnations. And again, I don't know why. I went on like a side tangent about like ink blending and stuff, but I don't know what it is. I love carnations. I think they are the cutest little flower, and like a little bouquet of carnations just makes me happy. And they last forever. Like just as cut flowers, like as long as you change the water regularly, it's crazy. I have had carnations last like a month just changing out the water. Love them. I just think they're the cutest little flowers. Anyway, I adhered my flowers and the greenery. And then for my first bit of splatter, I'm using this Altenew Iridescent Shimmer ink spray. I showed this in a recent video. I had purchased this. This was it doesn't happen to me very often, but sometimes I buy things and then I forget about them and then I repurchase them and then I discover the original one. That's what I did with this Shimmer ink spray. I had purchased it, put it in a bin. I don't even know what I did with it. I literally do not remember. And then I ordered it again. And then when I got the bottle, I realized I had one. So I have plenty of Shimmer to do tons of splatter with. Love it. Anyway, shook it up really well to disperse everything. And then I just put it, rather than spray it, I just put it on my little palette and use my fan brush so I could add like actual splatter with it. And then of course I'm going to add some white splatter too. Kind of went a little overboard on this one with the splatter, but again, I like it. It's become a form of therapy for me. Honestly, it just is what it is. So I added white gouache to my little palette, thinned that out with water, and then splattered that, let it all dry. And then for my sentiment, I'm using the Timeless Sentiments die set. This is another oldie but goodie favorite of mine that has been out for I don't even know how long. And I die cut the word hugs from Altenew's Dazzling Diamond Glitter Cardstock. And as I showed, I keep every little scrap of this stuff. I love it. And I even managed to rip the sentiment in half because I was shoving things out of my way on my work surface that doesn't have enough space and managed to rip it, which doesn't matter. With glitter cardstock, as long as you like adhere it in place, you can't tell. So I just butted those two pieces up against each other and adhered them to the layer I had die cut from white cardstock. The outline I had die cut from vellum. If my plan had been to use like just flat normal cardstock and I'd torn one, I would have just used the torn piece as like one of the under layers or like on the back of the vellum here. There's always ways to make it work, you know? But with glitter cardstock, that is one of the perks of glitter cardstock. With all the texture on it, you literally can't, even in real life, looking closely, you cannot tell that it was torn right there. So I adhered all those layers together and then adhered that to my card front. And then as my little final bit of embellishment, I've got these little gem sparkles because the color was, of course, perfect. So I'm just going to tuck a few of these into place. And these are self-adhesive, so you just peel and stick. It's another thing I enjoy. I'm all about the convenience lately. I still don't mind, doing the coloring and the layering and the mixed media and all that fun stuff. But sometimes it's really nice where, the wafer dies are all thought out for me. The ink colors come in a quad. The embellishments come self-adhesive. I'm like, yes, this was just a fun little card to make. So on the inside, I used that remaining piece of the embossed cardstock. So I adhered that to the inside. And then I stamped a sentiment along it on the inside. And the sentiment is from the Altenew Build-A-Garden Dreamy Dahlias set. I pulled out one of the sentiments and then I just stamped that along the inside using, I'm pretty sure it was the olive ink. Yes, I used the olive ink to stamp that sentiment and I just stamped it kind of along the angle of that embossed cardstock and that finished off the card. So like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all of the things in the description box below the video, so you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. I appreciate it, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!